So you guys, we got a secret for y'all. Around 12 years ago, we worked for a dating company, and it was probably the top, or at least top two dating companies around at the time. It was a pickup artist one. We actually weren't a dating coach, if you guys are wondering, but we worked in the marketing department. That's how we actually met each other. And we want to spill all the tea as to what actually happened there. So I'm going to kick it over to our co-host, Ray, to kind of talk about his experience.
Yeah, and for those of you guys who aren't familiar with like how popular this dating company was, I actually heard that the movie Hitch with Will Smith was like loosely based on some of the dating coaches in this company. So there was a lot of influence, and if we named some of the characters, and if you're familiar with the stuff, if anybody's like who's read like The Game by Neil Strauss, if we name some of the characters, you would probably um, recognize them because we even had the opportunity to meet many of these characters and up close and personal.
Yep.
So it was definitely a fascinating experience. I'll say that I actually got involved because at the time I was in a relationship and I got involved because I had these like ideals of wanting to help men be better in relationships. Like I really felt like I had this kind of a like this idealized romantic uh, thought that which was soon enough shattered. Very
Very, very
very
soon.
very
Yeah.
shattered. I was like, this is not what I thought this company was about at all. Um, but I was genuinely there because I wanted to help other men be better in relationships, be better men, be better husbands, be better boyfriends. But
That company was not about that.
no,
We did
no,
not realize it.
little did I know.
So that's actually a really good point. Like, what was the moment where you're like, "Oh shit, this is not what I thought it was"? Because I wanted to that thing. I wanted to it because I just wanted to get hookups with women, or just
We
date
were
more
young.
women.
We were young.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of experience that. So, and part of it was because I got fired, or was I resigned from working in aviation. So, luckily on the side I built WordPress, so it kind of was a segue into marketing. So I was like, yeah, this is a great combination of my interests in self-development with the skills I want to develop. But obviously not everything was what it seemed, and we would love to hear your experiences as to what was the specific time you're like, wow, this actually kind of is not what I thought it was.
Uh,
Was it a moment? Was it a series of moments?
Definitely a series of moments. I think it was little by little where your soul is just being sucked out of your. No, I'm just kidding. But really,
Not really. Kind of felt that way sometimes.
yeah. I mean, first of all, we were paid pretty poorly,
Abysmally.
very poorly. Like I lived in I lived in a small, dinky little room with three other roommates. It was probably the size of some of your walk-in closets.
Dude,
Um,
I'm gonna one up you. I lived in a studio in Hollywood, a studio designed for one person with one, two, three, four, five, six other people.
yeah, you
I
were
ha-
definitely.
it was illegal, straight up illegal. They made a room for me, not for me personally, but there was a room that they kind of split the studio into for like these tiny rooms. You want to know how wide that room was? 4 to 5 feet wide. Like literally, I could only fit in the twin mattress.
Yeah, I always asked like, hey, like, what's your place look like? You told me it was small and you lived with all these
It
people.
was terrible.
And yeah, because mine was bad, being that I had a full size mattress. I want to say.
You had a freaking king size motherfucker.
Oh, they know how to upgrade.
Yeah, you
They
had
know
a
how to say
king.
enough of
I said a
this.
king size.
No, no, no. Well, when you came over, but when I first started, it was
Yeah.
like a full size mattress,
Hmm.
and it was on the floor, and and at the edge, it was on the corner, and the edge of the mattress was only about a foot from each side.
Hmm.
So that was a small room. You came
Yeah.
over later when eventually my website that I built took off and I had more income. But at the time, I
Yeah.
could only when I first started, I was like, we were struggling. We were both struggling.
Oh, it was terrible. One last story of the struggle is the landlord that was profiting off of us, or the owner of that unit, not the owner or the manager. He also lived in the unit, but literally he would be sleeping in the hallway to the restroom. So in the morning when I'd use the restroom to use the restroom and shower, I had to hop over the landlord. But he wasn't paying anything, right? So they were just pocketing our money.
Yeah.
So it was
But
all,
yeah, the point of all this is basically we were paid very little.
yep.
So I think that definitely colors your experience when you're really struggling financially. But I mean, and there were some pros too. Like we
Yep.
got to attend some of these conferences that this dating company had,
Hmm.
and where people paid thousands of dollars,
Oh yeah, it's
right?
crazy.
Thousands of dollars to attend, and we got to sit in it for free because we had to like record the material
And we had to do shit around it.
yeah, vet it out later
Yeah.
and do and help these clients out. But we got to learn a lot of the material. So there were some pros, but there was also some weird stuff. Like one thing that I didn't really like was that after work, um, there was some pressure to go hang out with the clients and the dating coaches and to go to like clubs and bars and stuff like that and to
Yeah.
help them wing. And I had to, honestly, I did. It was kind of fun, like the first time, but afterwards, I was like, you know what? I just want to go home. I don't really
Like, I'm
like.
tired
Yeah, I'm
writing,
tired.
tired of like promoting the newsletters.
Yeah,
I
you guys
get,
don't pay me enough to like.
it's like I'm tired,
You know,
bro.
like this is that was yeah, that was a moment.
Yeah, to kind of interject, I think the biggest jarring thing is the good thing is that we had access to all the materials, like all the products that people wanted, right? The things that you pay 400, 500, $700 for, it was all free for us because, we were also editing it, putting it together.
Yeah.
So it was available to us. So that was great. But I was in such a bad space mentally, emotionally, and I'm not going to say physically, but I didn't work out at the time, but also just financially that it wouldn't matter if you're like unhappy, if you're like broke, not getting paid well, and you're just like an awkward 22-year-old, 23-year-old. That was my age at the time. None of that shit's gonna help you. So in a way, it was almost like a tease, right? It's like, hey, you have all this material. It only works when you're already like semi-attractive. So that was my experience. The other thing that I thought was very jarring is seeing the behavior of some coaches because oftentimes you think these people have it all figured out, right? They've had all these casual relationships, multiple girlfriends, whatever, right? And for some reason in my mind at the time, I thought, oh, they must have great relationships with women. Let me tell you, that was not the case. There were times that we'd hear some coaches, and I'm putting it very broadly, when they're talking to their girlfriend or the baby mama, they would be screaming at them. And there are times we'd be sending out newsletters. It would say like, this coach went to this event. When I was sitting across the top blonde girl, I was like, no, you weren't. You were just screaming at your baby mama last night, late last night, when we were setting up these newsletters to go out. So there was a lot of stuff that went on behind the scenes where it really showed that people are just human. That it's not good to idolize people because even for people that are watching this, if you're like 21 and you feel like a loser and think that we have it all figured out, we still have our own struggles. So everyone has their own struggles, and there's that halo effect of where you think like, oh, if someone's figured out dating, that must mean they're good at relationships. Or if they had relationships, that must mean they're good at all relationships. That's not simply not true.
I like that you're saying that because for me it was a realization that some of these dating coaches, just because they were good at dating or picking up women, didn't mean that they were good at keeping them.
Yeah.
And what I mean by keeping them is like they weren't really good at the relationship portion, and oftentimes they still had a lot of fundamental issues and trauma,
Yeah.
and had a lot of growing up to do. Where women, or at least if I were a woman, I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with this
Yep.
man child who could put on a bunch of charm and knew all the right things to say for however many hours. But you know what? Actually, being with them, they were not what I call real men. They were kind of pretending to be, and it was interesting to see that up close. Um, like what you're saying, it was kind of um, it was a kind of a good wake up call.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of them were in the mindset of let's just keep. This is actually very common in the pickup community or the dating or game advice, whatever you want to call it, is there's this overall mindset and focus to just have sex with as many women as possible.
Mm.
And I think a lot of the instructors, because your livelihood is also kind of based on that in a way, they were still in that mindset. And the funny thing is, when I think about it, there was a point actually when I was 26, 27, and I had worked on myself internally, gone to therapy and all that stuff, where I actually felt like I probably was more emotionally mature in that sense than they were. And that's kind of crazy, right? Someone that's mid-20s being more mature than someone that's in their later 20s probably has way more women than I have. But the point being is just because you can attract a lot of women and have a lot of casual hookups, it does not mean that you're emotionally healthy. And we're not here to stigmatize like sowing your wild oats, because if you want to do that and you're young, of course, go on, explore and have fun. But we did see a lot of the guys who were still kind of in that very juvenile Peter Pan mindset of like life's a party, let's keep fucking, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the thing. And again, if you're young, that's okay to experience. But if you're like in your 30s, your late 20s, and you've never had a relationship, I mean, I can't say it's not healthy for you, but that is a pattern right there that you should very much look closely at and wonder why is it that you shy away from intimacy.
And I think to comment on that, I think the industry and I mean, unfortunately, the marketing, because when you first meet a dating coach, one of the first things you kind of want to know is like, hey, do you have any game? Go pick up that girl over there.
Yeah, let's see the
So
infield, right?
yeah, let's see
Like,
the infield, let's see the reports, right? And so let's see the video footage of you know, blurring this girl's out face out and having your cam guy. Anyway,
yeah.
um, so I think it's unfortunate because I get it. Like you want to know if this guy can walk the walk or if he's just all talk. And so it seems like a lot of these guys, I mean, they just post and they kind of really master this skill of because
Hmm.
nobody really cares about like, are you a high quality man? Do you,
How long was your longest
how long was
relationship?
your exactly right? Like, are you dependable? Are you,
What would your ex-girlfriend say about you?
yeah, like, no, like people don't get like hire dating coaches for that. They want to see like how many can you get a first night lay, like same night lay? Can you, and so, all right, cool. And so not a lot of people care about inner game. It's understandable how we got to this point
Yeah.
because these other tricks are kind of like when you first learn snowboarding, you don't want to know how to like the basics. You want to know how to do jumps, right? Everyone who's just starting off wants to know all this cool stuff. But it's I think for me, like what you're saying, there was a point where you and I were working in the office, and this guy, he was one of the students. He walks in, he's like, I just talked to like I just hit on 100, approached 100 women on the streets, and I got blah 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 numbers. And for me, that was actually a wake up call.
You're like, wow, that's madness.
Yeah, first of all, I thought you approached 100 women and got whatever I forget, like got like 20 phone numbers, I don't know, something like that.
That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think it was probably less than that. I think it was like 10, 5 or 10.
Yeah,
But first of all, 100. And in
yeah.
my head, I was also thinking like these poor 100 women, like who are just like this guy doesn't care about anybody. Not saying that because I understand that everyone needs to start somewhere in order to
Yeah.
practice.
Hmm.
But the way that he was talking, he was like, I can't wait to bang them all. And like the way he was talking was like, man, we as a society are in trouble. Um, that this is what we're learning and teaching young people. First of all, this poor kid who's just learning like how to go out and bang a bunch of chicks, and then the women that are gonna be banged, uh, they're all gonna have issues. Like we're just and then they're gonna hate on men, and then it's gonna create more of these like guys who have issues who are just gonna want to bang more. And it's like we as a society are just going down a dangerous like spiral.
It's just trauma begets more trauma, right? Your emotional wounds, wounded people seek out other people.
Yeah.
They wound others, like hurt people, and it continues. I think it is sad. I think that is the lifeblood though of these dating companies. Like sure, they might promote. I mean nowadays I think it's a in a way I think nowadays it's a little bit more decentralized because you have coaches that can be from anywhere that say find your dream man or woman and stuff like that. So nowadays a little bit more decentralized, but back then there was really like one or two top companies, right? There was a few other outlying like dating coaches, but we were working at arguably like the top two companies, and that's how they're making money, right? They want to cater towards a guy that wants fast, casual things. Sometimes maybe a relationship down the road, but you know, I think it is a very smart marketing tactic to target guys that are just horny and want results and don't really have results.
Horny or lonely.
Yeah,
And this is not to say I think both. I mean, adding the footnote here, you got to start somewhere. I think it's understandable that if you're not getting laid at all, that you need to know how to go out and talk to women and learn how to get a woman in bed, because at some point having a relationship with a woman, you will probably have to not have to, you get to have sex with her.
Yeah.
She gets to have sex with you. Um, but it is, I think him and I are both saying that it was kind of, um, honestly, for me, it was a little bit disgusting to see how much of an emphasis there was on just that one portion of getting laid, and how much we kind of dehumanized women and objectified them. It was it wasn't a very balanced talk. It wasn't like an older brother or a healthy father talking to their son about how to build men up. It was it was kind of sleazy, and so I on one hand completely understand why, if I were a woman and I discovered that this society of underground pickup artists existed back then, at least back then, like Jeremy said, things have gotten better,
Yep.
because I think women, it's gotten exposed and women everywhere are like, what? This is, because it was pretty disgusting on how much women were objectified
Yep.
and used, and
They were just viewed as numbers, right?
yeah,
I mean, even the way they were talked about, right? Like the 1 to 10 rating scale,
yeah,
and guys would basically have this goal of getting up. Like they would try to. It's a guy to know like want to quantify things. I think a lot of guys are more engineer minded, right? But in a way, it's also dehumanizing for whoever you're quantifying. Yeah, I think it's natural for guys to think logically and approach it scientifically. I think actually a lot of times the guys that struggle with women, they're more scientific and engineer minded, right? So that's okay in a way, but the level of objectification that we saw was astounding,
yeah,
and not in a good way. Like it was not good.
yeah, it wasn't balanced at all. I think today, luckily, the industry and a lot of the dating coaches have moved more towards a healthier mindset. I think in a lot today, as we all have gotten older and wiser, um, it's sometimes I think Jeremy and I have gone back and found some of these dating coaches and their videos, and I think the attitudes have changed a lot. So thank goodness. Um, but at least like the point of this video is to kind of share with you that this was something to watch out for. That, and then back in the day, it wasn't that healthy, and him and I both got in with different expectations, and we soon saw like this is not what we want to be a part of, and we left pretty. We weren't there for very long, um, and I say very long in quotes because that could be a different definition for everyone.
We actually, the funny story behind that, by the way, is I was thinking of leaving. He was thinking of leaving, and I was hoping I would leave before him, so didn't have to do other work. But he ended up leaving first. Okay, so the funny setup was this: there's a marketing director,
Did I
and
tell
there's
you that I was gonna leave?
yeah, you told me, but I was actually planning to leave. But I think the thing that threw me off is that the marketing director also left. So then it left Ray and I, and then Ray left before I left, and that meant I had to do three people's work. So thanks a lot, Ray.
It's all part of my secret
It
plan.
was terrible. That's when I actually
Oh,
demanded like to get paid $30,000 instead of like, or $36,000 instead of like $30,000. But I actually ended up leaving shortly after that because then I got paid double the salary after I hopped to a new field. But
good for you. Well played.
yeah,
Well played.
it was terrible. It was weird, low pay. I guess to summarize it is it was an interesting time. You really see behind the scenes, but ultimately we were underpaid. We were very stressed out. We noticed that the way we idealize these coaches, reality is very different from how we idealize them, and that the industry itself, the focus they placed on objectifying women, was quite frankly pretty disgusting. So all in all, a good learning experience, but it's not something that I would want to personally repeat ever again.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so with that, just wanted to share with you guys a little bit of a sneak peek in case you've ever wanted to work closely with this industry. Things are probably different now. Obviously, it depends on which dating coach you resonate with the most. but make sure that you go into things with open eyes and realistic expectations because they are human. We're all human. And wish you guys the best of luck. If you have any questions, Jeremy and I are considering starting a Patreon or some sort of program for more insider tips and actual, um, maybe coaching one day even. Thinking about it, not sure we want to do that.
Yeah, TBD, but I think in general, I think we are older than guys in their 20s, and we're more than happy to share our life experiences, not just with dating and relationships, but as a whole with self development.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks again for watching, and if you like anything that we talked about, please comment, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up because it helps the YouTube algorithm know that we're doing the right thing and you want to see more of these videos. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys in the next video.